test.
Testing, testing. All right, here we go. So we're going to get started in about 5 minutes here. If you don't have your table number assigned, please come find us. We'll get that information for you, and please be sure to grab some food. Thank you. If everyone could find their table, we're going to get started here in just a minute or two. Hope you all got your food. We have plenty of great eats, it looks like. All right. Well, thank you all for taking the time for coming down to the Portland building. We really appreciate it. My name is Prashanth Piketty. This is way easier. I'm an external facilitator, and I'm here to make sure that our working session is as smooth as possible today. So really appreciate you taking the time. We're going to talk about a couple things today. We're going to talk about the past and present of OVP, and what we're really looking forward to is discussing your thoughts and hearing all your thoughts about OVP's future. Before we start, I want to thank you all for coming down to engage in this discussion and appreciate your time and engagement ahead of time. We have a really, really diverse number of organizations that are here for the session today. If you look around, I'm sure there's organizations that cover a lot of different aspects of what OVP hopes to support and does support. So thank you for all the diverse perspectives that are being brought to the table and discussed today. Some quick housekeeping notes as we dive in. Bathrooms are located right around the corner over here. And the meeting is being recorded by OpenSignal over in the back. So thank you. All right. So our goal today is to... Hello, hello? Hello, hello? Okay, perfect. Our goal today is to cover this agenda. There's a lot of topics that we have on our plate for today. We have a 2.5-ish hour session, and we hope to get through all different pieces. And in order to do that, we wanted to follow the following community agreements. I think it's really important for a topic that has this importance, this intensity, for us to make sure that we come together as a group and listen actively and respectively. Must be. Is there another mic that we can? I will just try to speak loudly. Let me know if anyone
No,
can't.
because online.
Oh, online.
So try that one.
Testing, testing. We're going to give this a shot. All right. We're going to try to listen actively and respectfully. We're going to share airtime. We want to be present and open to new information and perspectives. We want to assume positive intent, respect each other, and respect the group. We want to speak your own truth, communicate intentionally, honestly, and respectfully. We want to ask questions to clarify. We want to call out bias, and we want to be okay with ambiguity. The way that I look at these community agreements is this is the vehicle that we're going to use to get through the very important topics that we have today. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your engagement. And I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth to kick us off.
Thanks, Prashanth. Hi, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Perez, she, her. For those who don't know me, I am a chief of staff to the Deputy City Administrator for Public Safety, which is Mike Myers. It's a mouthful. But right now, in this capacity, I oversee the Office of Violence Prevention. So I want to thank you all for taking time out of your week to help us strategize on what is next for OVP. I'll just note, many of you have been living in this community and working in this community much longer than I have. So I have spoken with so many of you about what should come next for OVP, what funding is needed, where our efforts should be focused, what we need in the next director. And I've heard a lot of really great ideas, but we have not put them all together. And I don't think we're necessarily all aligned. So I wanted to put this conversation together, not as the only, but the first of community strategy sessions on how we move forward. Today, we are starting with presentations on OVP's past and present, so we can make recommendations for the future based on a shared understanding. For those who are familiar, which is probably everybody in this room, we've had a dynamic past couple years with a lot of changes, changes in leadership, changes in budget. And so we thought that this was the perfect time to really come together and hear from you so we can set the direction. That being said, I want to start with the origins of the Office of Violence Prevention. I'm going to turn it over to John Kanda, who is the first director of the Office of Violence Prevention, and Antoinette Edwards, another director of the office, both who have dedicated their lives to working in the community, saving lives, and making our communities safer for everyone. So, John, turning it over to you.
Thank you, thank you. Good evening, everyone. It is really good to be here. And forgive me if I usually move around when I talk, but forgive me. I'm due for hip surgery, so if you see me falter a little bit, that's why. I can tell you how we started, but I'm not going to do that right yet, because there's some things we need to know prior to that. Because we're here to talk about the Office of Violence Prevention, can we give a moment of silence for all of those who have been impacted by what we're now here to speak about? Impacted in terms of injury, impacted in terms of those who have passed away, impacted by the families of those people who have passed away, impacted by those who are now incarcerated, for all of those people, for the community members who watch out their windows, for the community members who meet at neighborhood associations to talk about the impact of violence. Thank you. The least favorite memory that I have, and some of you were there as well, that I have personally attended 478 funerals in my time, and there have been many more since that. I have been on teams of first responders at crime scenes, seen more bodies than I care to remember, have been asked to identify people in the street because they were so badly disfigured. Can I just be real with you? Yes. It is my least favorite. When I came back to Portland in 1989, I was serving in the U.S. Air Force as a policeman. And shortly before I got out, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And that was not to be a policeman, but be in a position to be called before the police were needed. And so I came back and joined a group at the Northeast Coalition of Neighborhoods before we could know where to go. I need to give you a bit of information on where we've come from. HUD formed Model Cities programs in 1966 to redevelop urban community planning in selected cities around the country and prioritize local participation. It eventually failed all over the country because municipal leaders often froze out local participation, favoring heavy-handed, hand-picked advisory councils. Sound familiar? Yes. The concept of model cities represented a new approach to that emphasized social program as well as physical renewal and sought to coordinate the actions of numerous government agencies in multifaceted attacks on the complex roots of urban poverty. I came along after model cities into the Northeast Coalition. At that time was led by a woman, a phenomenal woman by the name of Edna Robertson. Sharon McCormick was her right hand, who eventually became the city's crime prevention supervisor. There were other names of those involved, some of whom have given their lives for us to be here to have this conversation today. They stress that instead of making the table smaller and more exclusive, to make the table larger, to invite more voices, to gain more opinion and perspective. Some of those people quickly. Ben Priestley, Halim Rassan, Betty Martin, fierce neighborhood coalition neighborhood association leader, Mr. Charles Ford, Sheila Holden, Kenneth Edwards, Maria Antilla, Steve Rogers, Jimmy Brown, recently departed John Miller, Bishop A.A. Wells, Sr., Dr. Bethel, Harold Williams, Sr., Ron Herndon. We are graced by the presence tonight of Mr. Richard Brown, Mayor Bud Clark, and the Honorable Mayor Vera Katz. The conditions that set us to be here today. I want to talk to you about the table. There is, and there was a table at the Northeast Coalition of Neighborhoods. That table represented members of the community who would come, sometimes for planned meetings, and other times would just happen in because they had a thought. And the people would gather around that table, 1 by 1, 2 by 2, 3 by 3. And that table represented an opportunity for people who may not necessarily have had a voice in particular issues around the city to then come and bring their information, gain some consensus, some momentum, a groundswell built. That table and the participants around it, more than I have time to name, created things like the Albina Community Plan and the highly sought after Northeast Rescue Plan. If you're able to get your hands on those documents, I would advise you to do so, because in them, many of the issues, and the issue that we are focused on here tonight, have been talked about decades ago. We need to pay attention to those documents. That table still exists at the coalition, and they still use it for the same purposes. Let me tell you about some of the programs quickly that brought us into the reason for needing an Office of Violence Prevention. The Jan Home, MICAP, Minority Actions Concerns Program, House of Emoja, ECGS, Emmanuel Community General Services, SEI, Private Industry Council, at that time ran by a distinguished gentleman by the name of Benny Bogan. Every program that served the youth and families in the city of Portland used the Private Industry Council, or PIC, for summer jobs for kids. Our thinking at the time is probably as it is now. If we give our young people something to look forward to and a little training along the way, some nurturing, some mentoring. They'll be too tired after they get done to go out in the streets and do the types of things that we thought. Do you know that when we asked Mayor Katz for resources, she said to us, "What do you need?" "Well, Mayor, we need transportation." She ordered or went into contract with the Laidlaw bus system. So for every program that had summer activities for kids, they would have transportation across the city and outside the city. There were jobs available. There was mentoring available. And many more things. We spent, crime prevention staff, Catherine Anderson, for those of you who remember that name, Marsha Palmer, and others, and North Precinct, after the mayor had 15 buses lined up for us to take kids out on activities. And we handmade 650 tuna fish sandwiches, standing next to, alongside the police bureau. Robert King's in the room. I believe he was one of the officers that were there, so that these kids would have something to eat when we took them over to Washington to the 8 Caves for the 2.5-mile hike in complete darkness. And then we took them horseback riding. And you know what was funny to me? Some of the baddest gangsters in the city of Portland, sitting on top of horses, scared out of their mind. Some even shed a few tears. And we used those moments. We went camping. We went canoeing. These kids had never been out on a lake. And we did those things. And while we were doing those things, we had staff from all of and more programs that I mentioned talking to these kids, 1 by 1, 2 by 2, individually. And just talking to them about, this is a part of life that you've never experienced. And that was the entire goal, to get them out of the city, away from all of the lights and all of the noise, so that we would have a chance to get inside of here. And those efforts worked. What brought us to needing the office was then youth violence prevention. The same thing that we are faced with today. Numbers of shots fired on a daily basis. People being injured. This gang activity infiltrating schools and community centers, parties, dances, bar mitzvahs, everything. And so the body counts were high, unfortunately. And gangs had marked off their territory. Colors, for every color that you can think of, there was a group that was associated with the business of that group. And so we were meeting. And in those days, the US Attorney, the DEA, the FBI, Violent Crimes Unit, Sheriff's Department, Portland Police Bureau, School Police, Portland Public Schools, various communities of faith, people from neighborhood associations and communities would meet all together, and we would talk about these things. There were no silos, because we knew that we could not afford to have these conversations individually. We knew it would take everybody. And so everybody came together in the King facility. And that's all I'm really qualified to speak about, because that's where I spent 90% of my time. You had gang outreach staff, youth gang outreach staff. You had NACO, New Approaches to Community Outreach. That was a $250,000 contract that we got specifically from the US Attorney's Office. We had the TriMet Rider Advocate Program, which essentially were outreach workers on buses. TriMet approached the Northeast Coalition because we had a gang outreach program and said, we're having troubles on these lines. Could you jump on these bus lines, your staff, your current staff, and see what you see? Because what we're seeing is gambling on buses, harassment, aggravated assaults, drug use, drug sales. So we did. For 30 days, 1 month, I took our outreach team and we jumped on these troubled bus lines, and we began to interact with young people across the city. But then it became strategic, because it's like, if we have people working at schools and across the city, daytime, nighttime, weekends, holidays. How much better would it be if we had a similar group working on transportation lines, because they very easily could communicate with us where the groups were heading and where they were going. So there was some strategy to it, and those things worked. Regardless of all the programs that were out there working, it still wasn't enough. So the mayor at the time, Tom Potter, I can't remember who the county chairperson was at the time, but they called a meeting. There were 40 of us in this room. It was a 3-hour meeting, much like this one. And it ended with a dot exercise to prioritize the things that needed to happen. There was 15 minutes left in the meeting. True story. This is exactly how OVP came to be. I brought with me 3 longitudinal studies of violence in the state of Oregon. So it was evidence-based, it was fact. This was real-time data. And I got frustrated. And at 15-minute mark, they were closing down the meeting, and I said, we haven't solved anything. And I didn't mean to, but those 3 studies just kind of slipped out of my hands. And they slid down the table. I'm serious. I really didn't mean for that to happen. But they went halfway down the table, and there was no air in the room. And I said, look, we have studied this problem enough. We have the research that proves that the programs that we're operating and are being funded have merit, and they work, and lives have been saved. What more do we need to study? What we need to do is create something that we can all benefit from. And I stopped there. I grabbed my stuff, and I was headed out of the room. Jimmy Brown grabbed me by my pants. And he looked at me and said, don't leave. Just wait. Just wait. I'm trying to get away because I was finished. And the mayor said, after he looked over at the county commissioner, they whispered something. And he said, well, John, what do you propose? Well, what we need is a central office that acts as a central repository for all information that is related to youth, youth violence, youth programs, and data in one place. So we can disseminate that information, and we can put that information out as we see fit. But not only that, this office also needs to have resources so that it can fund efforts in the city that are promising and upcoming. And we need the participation of all of these partners that I mentioned before. And I stopped. They spoke again. And then Mayor Potter says, John, I want to appoint you as chairperson of this committee, and I want you to pick the people in this room that you need to develop this office. I am not lying to you. That is how the Office of Violence Prevention started. So yes, it would be easy for me to say in July of 2006, the office was formally recognized. But you have to understand, there was a whole lot of stuff and a whole lot of people involved that happened prior to that, that set the conditions where it was necessary for this office to be born. Finally, I'll say this to you. I know that there are people here that I have offended in one way or another. And for that, I am sorry. I apologize for the things that I've done that were self-serving, that were selfish, that only had me and mine to gain. I'm truly sorry if I've hurt, offended anyone. I am not sorry that what was placed in me was a spirit of better. I will not settle for less when I know that more is possible. So whatever you decide tonight, I may or may not be part of that conversation, but whatever you decide, I want the city of Portland to know, and all of you who represent it, you do not have all the answers. The answers come from the community. And just because the city puts its stamp of approval on something doesn't mean it's the best thing since sliced bread. We started this neighborhood association structure with ordinary, everyday moms and pops, grandpas, grandmas, retired folks, grandparents in the community. And we were able to do massive things. I challenge you tonight to make the table larger and invite more people to come. Thank you. I now want to introduce, you all know her as Antoinette Edwards. I lovingly refer to her as my third grade teacher.
And I received that. Elders in the house go, hey. I'll be very short, but this was important because if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. And there's some lessons learned from this brother and the sacrifices that he made and he shared. But I'm gonna be so short, but I'm gonna do a little something in the spirit of a culture. It's called call and response. Just a little church, stand if you're able, just stand if you're able. An acknowledgement of all pronouns. But what I'm gonna say, when I say it, Lily Bunnix here, give it back to me more better, okay? Rumor has it that sisters and brothers have to share the same family. Not so. I didn't see no attitude. Not so. Sisters and brothers are those who elect to be. I don't see you, Troy. I don't see your mouth moving. One family, one heart. They are not classified by outer color, social standings, degrees of education, the contract you got, the contract you didn't get, and especially not by competitiveness. Sisters and brothers can meet eye to eye and can say to one another, fear not. Dare to be all that you are. For you will not diminish me by being yourself authentically. Welcome, y'all. Thank you. What I want to share briefly about my time, and I was honored to serve as the director of OVP for 10 years. And my sharing and my learning and my hope for you tonight, as Brother John shared, it was about community. And we need each other. And with needing each other, there's that shared accountability and opportunity. But I love the community agreements. And my hope for you tonight, that you will come together in that spirit. I brought a copy of the Rescue Plan 1997. We have all that we need to do what needs to be done. Right here in this room, y'all, I believe that. I'm too old to lie. You have all that you need, but it's the intent that you come with. And I'm gonna tell you the one thing, if I could leave you with briefly the next 2 minutes, it's about relationships. It's all about relationships. And what I can tell you about OVP, we developed the Community Peace Collaborative. When John had it, it was a gang task force. But community came together, and it could be a voice like Brother Andre, because you know he's going to say what he's feeling. We don't need to be coming up here with all this gang stuff. You labeling us already. I hear you, brother. The community, over 100 people in the room. Hyde was there. Community Peace Collaborative is coming together. And let me tell you the people that came. And I'm glad he reverenced, where is Robert King? We would come together. Everybody was there. And I mean, no one was left out, because we came with the motto that if you're not at the table, you're going to be on the menu. And we're tired of being on the menu. So folks came, police, DAs. One woman came, a lot of anti-police. And I know, trust, we got to build that. But people keep coming back, and one sister, Sister Eileen, said, you know, I don't like the police. But because of you, Robert King, how you keep showing up when people cuss you out, showing up when you didn't give them a ticket, had to give their mama a ticket, but you keep showing up, and we built trust. That's how we got Brother Israel, and I'm so proud of him. He was an outreach worker. And I said, baby, you're more than that. And I love my outreach workers. And now, who are you today? Who are you today? You know, Mama, go put you on blast. What's your title?
I'm a lieutenant with the Portland Police Bureau.
He's a lieutenant for the Portland Police Bureau. And that goes from working with brother to brother and building that trust. Because we've created a culture of silence in our community because there is not the trust. I had a woman that came to the meeting, everybody came to the meeting. She said, I know who killed my brother, but I'm going to make the police do their job. But we're not giving up. But I know that silence comes from anger and no trust. But we built that in that room. Folks would come together, gang members that had shot each other came together and acknowledged the pain and forgave each other. And I want to acknowledge all the lived experience folks in here real quick that's doing the work. You can raise your hand if you want to. Sister, I know you're doing lived experience. Raise your hand. Lived experience, you're doing the work. There's value in that. But what I also know, with that lived experience, that accountability. Because hurt people that don't heal keep on hurting people. But I value what y'all bring because you know the texture of the pain and hurt. But we need all of you. And what I'm asking you, I'm almost there, access. Give each other access to your gifts and your knowledge. Because access is an opportunity to gift the best of who you are with the other folks. When we had the CPC, there was networking. People came together to share and to care. And you all have the answers in this room. And I heard Brother John talk about there's some pain here. There's some healing opportunities. But you can do that. Because I do know that people hurt if they don't get the healing and the trauma-informed care. But you all can do that. Please come with your best thinking, your best knowledge. Our children are begging for that. There's a basic children's right. We're not honoring what they need. There's an African country, and how are the children? If our children came up and asked you, how are the children, what could you say? I'm ashamed. We owe them more than that. But this is my last challenge to you, because y'all got work to do. It's not, these people gonna talk all my time away, the good food, but y'all gonna work, gonna earn that food. This is what I'd like to leave for you. And in honoring my indigenous native side, it's a poem from the Hopi elders, and it goes like this. And I'd like to give this to you all. You have been telling the people that this is the 11th hour. Now, you must go back and tell the people that this is the hour. And these are the things to be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in right relation? Where's your water? Know your garden. It's time to speak your truth Create your community. Be good to each other. And do not look outside of yourselves for the leader. Then he clasped his hands together, smiled, and said, "This could be a good time." Now there is a river flowing, now very fast. It's so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel that they are torn apart and will suffer greatly. No, the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river. Keep your eyes open and your heads above the water. And I say, see who is in there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are not to take anything personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment that we do, our spiritual growth and journey come to a halt. The time for the lone wolf is over, y'all. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do, all that you do on this day must be done in sacred manner and in celebration. Because you all are the ones that we've been waiting for. And I thank you.
Well, that is difficult to follow, but I'm going to do my best. Thank you so much, John and Antoinette, for your leadership, for your wisdom. I know I've learned so much from you, and really hope we can take the things that you have said and take that into the future. I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are recently with the Office of Violence Prevention and some recent history. So for those who don't know, the Office of Violence Prevention used to be in the mayor's office. In 2022, it got moved under the Community Safety Division, under Mike Myers. And then OVP welcomed Safe Blocks, Rose City Self-Defense, and the Youth Against Violence program in July of 2023. The ceasefire program was implemented in June 2023. And then the OVP director resigned in April 2024. Due to the turnover in leadership in the past couple of years at OVP, we opted to begin working with a shared leadership model at this time so we can keep the work going, but allow a thoughtful and intentional process to find the next long-term director. Rachel Fetters, Bobby Hamilton, Andrew Culberson, and Sarah Johnson have all stepped up to help keep daily operations going as we go through this process. In the spring of 2024, the intensive case management contracts, and I don't expect everybody to know what all of this is, and one employee moved to the ceasefire program to support the work at ceasefire. Intensive case management provides 18 months of case management to the highest risk individuals. And then due to budget constraints, we lost 2 Safe Blocks positions and the Youth Against Violence program in the fiscal year, which started in July. So that's a little bit of high level recent history. I then want to talk a little bit about org chart because people are always really interested in what is going on at the city. So for those, again, who don't know, the city is currently undergoing a huge transition. City council is changing from 5 to 12. The mayor is changing, and then the organizational structure is changing. And so we have a huge transition. Things are not set right now. Things could change with the new mayor January 1st of next year, but this is where we're at currently. So right now, we have the public safety service area. The folks who report to Mike Myers are the ceasefire program director, the business services manager, me, under policy and programs, the police chief, although that one's a little complicated, but I'm not going to get into it today, Portland Fire, the emergency management, and 911. So that's the org structure there. And then under me is policy and programs. That is where the Office of Violence Prevention currently sits in the organization, along with Portland Street Response, our advisory boards and commissions, communications, and transition. So we'll also have this up on the website so that folks have access to it. I know for some folks this is really helpful and possibly the first time you are seeing this. And then here's the Office of Violence Prevention. So right now, our director is vacant. We have Charlie Caldwell, our wonderful executive assistant, Sarah Johnson running Rose City Self-Defense with Tony, Andrew Culberson, who runs the Safe Blocks program with these lovely individuals, Rachel Fetters, Bobby Hamilton, Ria Walters, and Mike Tavares are all within the traditional violence prevention program. So 3 main programs that we have currently in the Office of Violence Prevention. So what do we do? Right now, we are doing street level outreach. We have Healing Hurt People, trauma and violence impacted families. Those are all grants, so that we grant out for those, or sorry, they're contracts. We contract out for those. Then we have Safer Portland grants, the Safe Blocks program, and Rose City Self-Defense. I'm going to take this time right now to talk a little bit about our budget as well. And I don't have a slide for it, but just for context, prior to 2020, OVP's budget was about $2 million. In 21 through 23, due to the rising gun violence, the mayor's office increased funding by an additional $4.1 million. So that provided us bigger grants and a grant program. In 23-24, we then got Federal American Rescue Plan Act funding in response to COVID. So we got to do a few even bigger contracts and multiple grant programs. In 24-25, what we are going to see is the end of that ARPA funding. So we are going to see the end of those federal dollars. We did get extra funding from the mayor's office this year to see us through this fiscal to keep us at our current level. However, in the next fiscal year, we are being told that there's going to be a lot of constraints. And that is something that we are trying to prepare for by looking for grants, but also just wanting to inform you so you can advocate as you see fit with the mayor's office and future council. And then I'm going to turn it over to Bobby Hamilton to talk a little bit more about violence prevention.
Can everybody hear me, or do I?
No, you have to because of the people online. Do it for the people online, Bobby.
So I am going to walk around, though. I don't like attention really on me like that. But then also I can get out in the crowd. So I did want to start off. I will be discussing street level outreach, giving an overview of what that looks like, of what Healing Hurt People is and does, and the same as for the Trauma and Violence Impacted Families program. But I did want to start back there taking notes, as I usually do, of everything that's been said thus far. And I did want to acknowledge the fact that of all the work that's been done, Mr. Kanda mentioned things from the 80s, a little bit before I was able to work, but we do understand the efforts, and you guys have paved the way for future work. So definitely was needed at that time, and things continually advance and change, trends, information, and that sort of thing. So I wanted to touch on that first, and then also acknowledge what Ms. Antoinette mentioned about lived experience and how valuable that can be and is. And I think it definitely is a resource. And then we also need to make sure that we're supplementing that with additional and proper training and education and continued efforts as well. So with that said, I'll jump into street level outreach. I try to be very intentional and what I say, messaging I put out. So I'm gonna read from what I put together, but I'm open to conversations afterwards, and we can get a little bit deeper as necessary. So with street level outreach, our teams that are comprised of credible messengers and violence interrupters that provide both prevention and intervention, outreach efforts. So with that said, SLO programs recognize potentially lethal conflicts in the community by utilizing trained credible messengers and violence interrupters to identify and focus on individuals, groups, and communities at highest risk of being involved in violence, and by providing ongoing services, supports, and opportunities to these high-risk individuals. And they identify ongoing conflicts by speaking to key members of the community about ongoing disputes and through collaboration efforts with the city. What's that? My bad, y'all. I'll just stay up here. What's that? Oh no, I don't need any more slides. As much as I don't want to be up here, I'll come up here. Uh-oh, I did change it. Andrew, I did switch it on accident. With that said, I'll get into Healing Hurt People. So, and you can see which organizations offer these programs as well. So for street level outreach contracts right now, we've got Going Home 2, POIC, and then we are in the finalization stages for Nurture and GIA mentoring. For Healing Hurt People, that is POIC. Let me make sure, okay. So Healing Hurt People is a hospital-based violence intervention program that serves individuals of color between the ages of 10 and 45 who have experienced intentional trauma such as a gunshot or stab wound by utilizing a trauma-informed approach, which considers the adversity that the clients have experienced over their lives and recognizes that addressing this trauma is critical to breaking the cycle of violence. So very intentional work, very intentional contacts, and you'll see that in all of these programming. And then I'll touch on TVIF, which is our Trauma and Violence Impacted Families. This is structured as a collaborative city and county services multidisciplinary team that's created to provide support for youth and adults and their families to break the intergenerational ties that perpetuate violence with the community, within the community. It also serves as a single point of contact to provide quick response to its clients by setting appropriate service schedules and conducting service assessments. Again, I know time is limited. I'm available. We can discuss this more in length. I will say that my interaction with these teams has been amazing. Definitely needed. I do agree as far as bringing more people to the table, and I think that's why this is happening. And what we've learned and what we're knowing now, and all in effort to start that process and bring back some old processes that were successful. With that said, I'll pass it over to Andrew Culberson.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Andrew Culberson. I am the supervisor of the Safe Blocks program. I'll be brief. I appreciate your attention and just you being here, and we'll get to your participation soon. So briefly, what is the Safe Blocks program? We are a team of 6 coordinators and 1 supervisor. We offer safety trainings and education, place-based security assessments, community building activities such as block parties and service fairs. We collaborate with OVP's street level outreach program to magnify our respective community outreach and engagement efforts. The team also works with community stakeholders to identify and implement neighborhood improvement projects. These include green space development, lighting improvements, graffiti and trash cleanup, community-led murals, traffic control enhancements, and more. I'm going to skip much of the history. We can go over that later if you like. The take-home point, in 2023, the Safe Blocks program joined the Office of Violence Prevention. This brought together several programs with a shared goal of preventing crime, empowering the community, and increasing feelings of safety. Again, I promised I'd be brief. Where do we do this work? We focus this work in areas that suffer from historical disinvestment, high rates of social vulnerability, and high rates of gun violence. We are funded in 4 neighborhoods currently. That's Elliott, Hazelwood, and Powellhurst Gilbert under a $2 million federal grant. That's for 4 years. We work in the Cully neighborhood as well, supported by ARPA funds. We consider this a pilot project. This represents a change in our work as we come to OVP. We hope to take this citywide. With the success of this program, we'll be able to do that. Again, thank you for your input tonight. With that, I'm going to cut it off, and I'm going to introduce Sarah Johnson, our program director for the Rose City Self-Defense.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Hi, everybody. Hopefully this works. There we go. All right. So Rose City Self-Defense moved under the Office of Violence Prevention, as Andrew just mentioned, in 2022 or 2023. We teach community-based safety and self-defense classes and youth curriculum for ages 11 and up. Women's Strength was founded in 1979, and we've trained over 110,000 people since then. Rose City Self-Defense moved to the Community Safety Division, as Elizabeth mentioned, now the Public Service Safety Service Area. That's a mouthful, so everyone try to say it with me. Just kidding. This is not, can someone help me? There we go. All right. We have one program director, that's me, and one youth coordinator, Tony Fujiwara, who's over there. Classes are offered. We teach our classes in anywhere that donates space, but predominantly our community centers and our Sun schools is where we're teaching our classes. And so you may want to know, why is a self-defense program sitting under OVP? So what we've done, we are empowerment-based and trauma-informed. So when there's been increased violence in neighborhoods, we've responded and offered classes in that community to offer empowerment-based healing opportunities for that community. So in response to Jefferson High School, we were there within a couple months after the shooting there. The Hazelwood Project that's happening right now near 122nd and Burnside, we taught at a faith community there. And we really encouraged that community to come together. So that's how Rose City Self-Defense sits in the middle. And the one thing I may or may not have mentioned, it's a free program. So all of our classes and workshops are free of cost for any community member. And now I get to pass it off. That's all I've got to Ryan. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name's Ryan D'Ambrosio. I'm an analyst with the City of Portland in the Public Safety Service area, and most of my work is dedicated to OVP and the ceasefire teams. And so I really help them look at data, because it's important to look at data, look at trends, where we've been, where we are now, hopefully where we're going in the future, the progress that's been made. But I also wanted to take a step back, because sometimes, yeah, thank you. Sometimes when we look at data, it's easy to forget that there are real people behind these numbers. And so I just want to acknowledge that we keep these people at the forefront and know that there's a lot of pain and that families experience because of gun violence in the city. So as I kind of set up what all this data means, the Portland Police Bureau has been collecting gun violence specific data since 2019. So we're seeing data from 2019 forward. This data is available open source to the public, so you can go on the City of Portland website and find this data. The blue bars represent, this is total shootings. So total shootings here is defined as incidents that involved a homicide, involved an injury shooting, but also includes non-injury shootings, so shootings that happened where no one was injured. And the blue bars represent the total number of shootings from that particular month. The orange line represents the 12-month rolling average, so it helps you see the trend over time. Also placed on here are just some contextual signposts, so we know like what's been happening in other places. So the trend line, as we can see, starting in the middle of 2020, happened at the same time as COVID lockdowns, at the same time as the murder of George Floyd and the social justice protests. The total number of shootings in the city went up. This wasn't only a Portland thing, it happened all over the country. It didn't really start to level off until the middle of 2022. That's also the same time that the mayor announced the gun violence emergency declaration in July of that year. At that point, the 12-month rolling average was 116 shootings in that month. And then a couple public health declarations came out, but much later, so not until May of 2023, the U.S. House of Representatives declared gun violence a public health crisis. And then just a little over a month ago, the U.S. Surgeon General declared a public health approach to gun violence. And so some of these things are happening, but as you can see, sometimes they don't happen as quickly as we want them to. But we have seen a steady decline since the gun violence emergency declaration was announced by the mayor. You know, the programs that Bobby talked about that OVP is implementing, ceasefire, you know, we heard about the history and where we are now, but we are starting to see a decline. As of June of 2024, the 12-month rolling average was 76 shootings per month. So it's a 22% decline over the last 12 months. If you compare it to when the gun violence emergency declaration came on board, it's a 34% decline since then. If we kind of drill down a little bit and look just at homicide victims, again, the blue bars are the number of homicide victims per month. The orange line is the 12-month rolling average trend line. We see the same general trend, the increase in the middle of 2020. The plateauing didn't really happen until a few months later compared to total shootings. It was a little bit later in 2022, but we have seen a steady decline in homicide victims since then. We've seen a 29% decline over the last 12 months as of June 2024. And it's a 31% decline since the gun violence emergency declaration. Yeah. Sorry, yes. But we also want to be very aware that gun violence in Portland doesn't happen equally everywhere, right? There are populations that are much more impacted by gun violence. And this chart is all shooting victims from 2019 through June of 2024. And we can see the data just clearly shows that Black Portlanders represent a vastly disproportionate share of gun violence victims in Portland. And 41% compared to 6.5% of the total population. So it's important to contextualize who's most impacted by gun violence in the city and why OVP is implementing the strategy that they're implementing. And so lastly, this is going to be the last slide. This is the same chart of the gun violence homicide rate. The blue bars are the number per month. The orange bar is the 12-month rolling average total. But we're overlaying a couple other populations. So the gray bar is the 12-month rolling average among Black Portlanders. And the yellow bar is the 12-month rolling average among Latino Portlanders. And what this chart helps us show is that while the total decrease as of June 2024, 12-month rolling average is 29%, we're seeing a stronger decrease among Black victims in the city of 38%. And we see among Latino Portlanders that it's been pretty flat over time, so we haven't seen a lot of change either way among that population. And now I'll hand it over to Prasant.
Perfect. First off, I want to thank all of our presenters. I want to thank John and Antoinette. Thank you for bringing the spirit of OVP's history and the engagement in the community and how much of an impact that made to making progress and continuing to bring the right programs to the city. I would also like to thank all of our presenters for sharing the present of what OVP is doing right now. And I'm really excited. We're going to take a quick 10-minute break. Make sure that you all get your food, take a bathroom break, whatever it is. But I'm really excited for this next part of the session when we dive into our community work session. So we'll be breaking down. You all have table numbers that were assigned to you. And our goal is we're going to have a couple topics that we're looking forward to y'all addressing and working together, collaborating in the groups that you're in, and then sharing the recommendations that you come together with at the end. We'll do another, exactly as John mentioned, a dot voting exercise to try to better understand what are the things that really stand out to the community that we have here, so we can make sure that we're representing things in the best way possible. So we'll do a quick 10-minute break. My clock says 7:23. Let's meet back here at 8:23, and we'll get started. Oh, how about 7:33? That's way better. Thank you, friends. Really appreciate it.
I'm Richard. Yes, yes. Just wanted to come over just in person.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you in person.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more once Apricot really comes online.
Yeah.
Lots of questions and stuff.
Definitely.
And it's not going to be static, right? We can always,
No,
that's
of
probably what the
course.
testing is, but then we'll always
Yeah.
be able to make some changes.
I've been poking around a little bit, but I just got an email from somebody. I forgot.
Steven.
Steven, yes,
Yeah.
that's his name. This afternoon, so I just need to get back to him probably tomorrow morning.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. All right, we're getting close. I think we're going to want you to do a little bit more testing before we do.
Are you kind of like overseeing the whole?
I'm not. No, Steven's doing more of that. I'm just helping the team with overall evaluation and data collection stuff. It's a good question about who's going to oversee. I think it will be Steven for a while, and then once we get everything kind of up and running a little more smooth, he'll probably eventually transition off, and we'll have to figure out who's going to manage it. But we also have Bonterra, the vendor.
Okay.
And we have a good technical assistance contract with them, so they'll be able to help too.
Gotcha. So they'll probably be the go-to people.
I mean, you'll probably have to come through us. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be gatekeeping there or not.
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. And then, I don't know if this is a question for you, but something I was thinking about is the possibility of not only routing the data to the server that they have already planned, but also a POIC server. If that's possible.
I mean, let's talk about it.
Okay.
I can't answer those technical questions, but I mean, I don't think the city has any, would never say no to something like that. So it's just really a technical question, right? So,
I think it just would be a lot easier for, I guess, our team to not have to go back in the Apricot, all right, export, export.
Yeah. So we want it to be as easy as possible.
I'll shoot them the question.
Okay.
If they come.
Okay. And then there'll be another session with Zareen. I think you did something with Zareen before.
Yeah.
So we can ask her too. She's pretty knowledgeable. She's not with Bonterra, but she's with the company that's building out the system. So we'll have opportunities with both her, Bonterra, and
Well, enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
I'll see you around.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
want to scare you. We got about 5 minutes left on our little break here, but just wanted to bring attention over to the left-hand side of the room here. We have a kind of an open poll question for what qualities should the next OVP director have. So feel free to place your opinion over there. Thank you.
So as a facilitator, I don't know if you can help.
Yeah. I think, yeah. There's an information. Totally. 100%. I think that's a great thing for us to add as we continue to do research. We're going to have feedback from viewers at the end of this. I would love for that to be added. Because I think it's a great, but unfortunately, I don't have information for you to see. I do, yeah.
Okay, I'll give you a card. I'll give you a card. So I'll get, yeah, okay, I'll give you my card.
Love to get your card. Yeah. Sounds great. So we're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. If we can start working our way back to our seats. Thank you very much. All right, everyone, we're going to get started here. If we can find our way back to our seats and our tables.
We'll have this team round them up. right, folks, we're starting back up again. Find your seat. We can go ahead and start talking while people are still finding their seats.
All right. So as we're all finding our seats, we're going to try to kick off what we're most excited for, which is the community work session. So as John and Antoinette talked about at the beginning, at the opening for this meeting, the community perspective is so important. That's what we really want to be able to focus and maximize the rest of our time together on today. I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth in a second to talk through the details of how we're going to be using our next just shy of an hour to be able to work together. But one thing I will ask, if you don't have any papers with a circle on it and maybe some information, could you raise your hand? We'll make sure that we get the right papers to you. Looks like everyone's got their stuff. Awesome. Well, sounds good. I'll hand it over to Elizabeth to talk through how we're going to work through this community work session.
Thanks, Prashant. Okay, now to me, it's the real exciting part. It's hearing from you. We're going to do breakout sessions with the people at your table. So I'm glad everyone has found their table. There's instructions on your Liz, are there instructions on the table? Okay, there's instructions on your table. But you'll first start with assigning 2 roles. We'll need a facilitator and a presenter at each table. You'll have a staff person at every table taking notes for you as well. So everybody is going to have 2 questions that they're working through. The first will be the same question. So it's really deciding which activities should OVP be focused on. We put together these fun pie charts for the nerds out there. And what you're going to end up doing is you're going to pick the activities that you think OVP should be focusing on, and then you're going to assign a percentage up to 100% to fill it out. So to give you guys an example, I did a pie chart about how I like to spend my summer. 10% is having to do chores. It's not really what I like to do. 25% is reading outside. 30% is hiking. 15% for gardening, and 20% for playing sports, which if I did my math right, it's 100%. So that's what you're going to be doing in the first topic. The second, and so part of the reason that we're doing that is because we made you all aware of the budgetary constraints that we have. So this is an opportunity to tell us if our budget is constrained next year, where do you want us focused? What is the most important thing that we should be doing? Now you can do an alternative one too that says, you know, if we get an extra $17 million, how would you like us to spend that? We would love that, and we're working on it, but those are kind of the ways we want to do it. So the second question is going to differ based on the table that you're sitting at. Some groups are going to focus on how we can improve our grant and contract process. We've heard a lot from folks on that. How to best partner with your organization or with you, and then how we can best do our communications and community engagement. So what can we be doing better? You will have about 1 hour to get through both of the topics and provide recommendations that will help shape the future of OVP. We're going to give you a time check at about the 30-minute mark to remind you to move on to the next topic if you haven't. And then after that, we're going to reconvene and hear from each group.
So do you have a group of different things for us to select from to do the percentages?
Yeah, so on your directions on the table, there's some ideas. Now, they're not comprehensive. If there are other things that you think that we should be doing, you can add that in. But we did give you, I think, about 6 or 7 things that we're currently doing or could be doing that are options. But if you said, you know, I want horseback riding to be 20% of what OVP does, that's an option as well. We wanted to make it as free as possible for you, but also give you some ideas. So then when we have 10 minutes left in the breakout room, or breakout group, we're going to remind you to put all your recommendations on one of these fancy Post-its. And the staff person at your table will help you out with that. And then we'll share out. So we'll be hearing from every table on the recommendations that you have for OVP going forward. This is going to help to develop the OVP work plan, and we'll share out consistently so you can follow along with where we're at, and then, of course, hold us accountable to the things that we say we're going to do. We will be doing the dot exercise, so everyone will also, you should have some dots on your table. Everyone will get 3 dots where you get to vote on the recommendations that most resonate with you, the ones that you feel very strongly about. Yes?
I have a question for the list. They have violence prevention activities for youth, families, and adults. It's all split into 3 separate things. Shouldn't that just be one thing?
So the question is, you have youth violence prevention activities for youth, families, and adults. Should those all be one thing? It's really up to you. What we have heard, and I'll just say again, everyone has said different things, but the activities that I have heard that you would do for youth is different than the activities that you would do for adults, which are different than the activities you would do for families. So it can be put together, but we wanted to make sure that we gave a variety of options for folks.
Okay.
Any other questions before we get started? And a reminder, you have a staff person at your table that's going to help answer questions. I want to note that Stephanie Howard from the mayor's office is here as well if folks have questions, and she'll be mingling around. So is Mike Myers, and I will be around as well. We're going to go ahead and get started. If folks have questions, just raise your hand and we'll come around.
Take notes because his handwriting is so he's not going to write on that. I don't mind going to
should have been a list of a lot more things.
No, it's way more.
We had what, 12, 14?
Just before those, in fact, those are all new.
Some of them were new. Some of them were like, three of them were like, funny, but like, I didn't see next G on there. I didn't see guys helping dads. I didn't know.
Elijah at our table has a question I can answer about where our funding is most. So why is the same organization in two different cities?
I mean, you don't, the problem is you don't have that spider web to do, and you don't know. Well, first, so the money goes to this place because that's where the money always goes. I don't know that next G is doing something.
When we just did our team, we had 12 different Rachel showed up, the politician showed up. We're all out there and they're trying to brainstorm like, what can we do? We don't need to come up with new ways to do stuff. We're already out there doing it.
Well, because when you say politics for the last 3 years, safety here. I was also building shares, which is this year, saw those communities.
Started, yeah, do an assessment, you know, whatever. What I see is they give the bigger groups.
A lot of the time, they don't have that stuff on but somehow when that money comes it gets starts federal, it goes state, county, city, and then it goes over. They use their verses like there are practices that you know work. We don't have grant writers. Professional grant writers. How do you practice? It's not like that. You get action.
I'm just saying, he looked at me spooked, and I was like, no, it ain't me, man.
Systems. I think it should be a requirement. It's where most folks are just getting by. They're trying to just like stringing it together, making it work the best that they can. So like at the end of the day, the practice is kind of like out the window a little bit because there's no accountability. Well, and that's the thing that doesn't kind of exist.
And I wonder how many people just
What does that mean?
Say something.
All right, y'all. Just want to give you a 30-minute warning. If you want to move over to the second question, if you haven't started doing that yet, we'll regroup in 30 minutes and start to share out. Thank you.
we've requested the storm LiDAR, and then filter it to, try not to get frustrated. So that was like, it is frustrating. We're out there doing the work. We're out there doing the work. It's people like to see the work. Like, oh yeah, I've seen you in a meeting somewhere. I've never seen you in a So, yeah, making it sustainable funding, and that there's best practices tied to that. So there's training, continued training, or roadmap for someone to go down and get the technical assistance that they need, and continue to get the support that they need for practices. And if you commit to going down that road, then you can get long-term sustainable funding. So there's an actual path to that. And that means that you're investing in a relationship, you're investing in a long-term idea that this is, we've been doing this for a long time. Let's get somebody who we know we're going to stay. And that's been happening, don't get me wrong, already in some ways, but the growth aspect of it, or the expectation of accountability and best practices hasn't. Bringing that it's not support.
Somebody that only needs $25,000.
They get more money than that. It's like giving someone $20,000 is a lot of money. There's not really an in-between. Let's divide it up. I don't know how. They take the money away and find us
They spent all that work and they don't need you anymore. Starting to get
I've done these 4 things in relationships. I've never seen it. I've been doing this for a certain amount of time. So I'm an educator. So it's a little different because educators are required 5%. You know, it's a you can't go if you I don't know that it needs to be formal like that though, because that's going to be a barrier right now because there isn't a system that
It would be on the pie chart somewhere, but just a small dispersing.
$1,000.
The thing is, like, how many yeah, you know, we're all doing the same thing with different groups, so we can that's all work together. And if I get my team needs this, my daughter needs this, we can divide it like a little sugar process. Just imagine that citywide. That's what we're going countywide. Nobody just goes out because he's going on my own road. I need money for drugs, homeless, I need some food.
Yeah, I started singing. Yeah. Is that what you're? You got good handwriting. No, you can't. I feel like you might be a mouse over here a little bit.
Hey everyone, as we're at 15 minutes left. It's great to hear the buzz in the room. Sounds like a lot of great ideas are coming through. My only reminder as you write things down on the flip chart, the more that we can phrase things as recommendations, the easier it'll be to do the dot voting later on. So that would be my only note as you guys continue on to writing all these out. Thank you very much. 15 minutes.
Collaboration, like you were talking about.
Making sure they meet those
I was just saying that with the funding, I think it would be better for diversification, right? So not solely dependent on city dollars. That's just super good. As a way to have just for everybody understand funding, that's just as traditional as making sure you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Big one would be that match. That actually makes people rather than asking for money, they're out there getting money really.
So do we need fund matching? Or is it just strictly brand?
Having been on the grant share, you get more and more pressure on this side. When you're applying for money, they say, yeah, but you have to get double. We're going to do this, yeah, you can get that. And if everyone's on the wrong, there's only matching. Like I'm looking for the person that put in college 10 green in my pocket. I'm not doing it all myself.
We got you.
It's a wide band, but you feel like you're
Awesome, keep doing that. What you do.
So I would write down funding tiers and then maybe give an example. Where are those rates at? It's not obviously it's not 1,000 or 100,000.
That's a tough.
You know, starting like
Size and
I'm saying like a brand new organization talking about working together. It's like there's some sauce there.
sauce starting at 10K. Just give me just an example. Yeah. Collaboration without funding. I really like that one. Because like I said, just reading our statement, it's like, absolutely. I can only imagine. There's a movement. 20 orgs in there that aren't involved. And that's okay.
That's okay.
But
This
you
thing's
should. That's it. That's what I think
we'll need that speed again.
Situation. Collaborate.
We need to log back in though.
Maybe just underneath like parentheses, right?
So maybe the mapping, so maybe what we're really talking about is this mapping and understanding this is when you would
But if there's one more
send this
slide,
to
you need to show it.
this is when you would connect
You have to look.
understanding
Oh, but you can't put the screen down.
organizations around the maybe working together. Or maybe even that could be specific in this with better structure around we know that this is the folks that are going to get this position are going to be working hard so that you can things at the different spaces with different organizations.
All right. We're going to share out in just about 5 minutes. So make sure to get all those last thoughts on your flip chart. And then we'll ask each group to come up here, put their sticky note on the wall, and then give a quick 1 to 2 minute overview of what your group came up with.
You good, Kyle?
I didn't give you any warning,
So I'm working with a group that's safe right now. It's
All right, let me just do a quick gut check. Does everyone feel like they had enough time to mark everything down? Does anyone need the last couple minutes? Feels like we're pretty good? All right, that sounds good. So first off, thank you all for your engagement, for your excitement. It was really cool to kind of just walk around, listen to the buzz that's in the room. Lots of ideas being formed, lots of great conversations being had. So thank you for engaging so well and even just listening to all the conversations so far. I'm really excited to see what the recommendations and learnings and thoughts are from all the different groups. The way we're going to do this is I'm just going to call each group one by one. If you could bring your flip chart and then put it on this wall over here. The point of this is to be able to do this dot exercise. We want everyone to be able to hear all the different ideas and then be able to you should all have a little thing of 3 stickers, each participant. And as you leave, as we close up, as we're leaving, put a dot where you really resonate with something, a recommendation, a suggestion, a perspective. As John mentioned at the beginning of the session, that was something that helped when OVP first got started to be able to understand the perspective of the community, and that's what our team is looking for as well. So we'll start at the front here. Does table number 1 want to kick us off?
Now we're going to ask that people use the microphone so that people at home can hear you.
Yeah, so if you could use the mic and 1 to 2 minute overview would be fantastic.
I'm going to be brief. Okay, so the first thing that we came up is, the real question we had was, what should OVP really be doing? So the first thing was internal direction strategy. And what that means is OVP needs better structure. They need to lead by example. And we believe that OVP should create a CBO calendar. That way, if you are being contracted under OVP, there's a whole calendar that's shared so everybody knows what everybody is kind of doing, especially when it comes to outreach. So you know if you're doing here, like for instance, Dawson Park, there was a shooting. That could have been maybe prevented if there was a little bit more structure within the outreach. The second thing was sustainable funding / diversity. So with that is required ongoing training for grantees / accountability. And we can talk more about that on an individual basis, but when we say ongoing training, Meaning, when you are a teacher teaching anywhere, you have to keep educating yourself. You have to keep doing things. And what that looks like may vary, but currently right now, I don't believe that that's happening. And I think that that may be a little problematic. And then also street level outreach, community engagement, and et cetera. So when we talk about funding, these are the things that are on our funding list, which the list will vary also depending on the work that you do, but for a broader thing, everything should be funded sustainably. Another thing is the trainings will be from reputable parties. Trainings by people that look like us, that understand our Ebonics, that understand what's really going on in the community, in partnership with smaller orgs who can do those trainings. So we're third party, and that means everybody at the table is eating. Trainings for smaller CBOs, technical training, grant writing trainings, how to conduct yourself, professional training, you know what I mean? Just trainings overall. Just because we have organizations does not mean that we know everything. There's always room for more education. And also, minimizing options for funding. We feel like at our table, OVP is always asking us, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? There's too many moving pieces on the board. OVP should put their big boy pants on, seek out the options, tell us, hey, you have three options and let's pick. There's too much going on. Avoid too many options and community pleasing, and then create contracts that require CBOs to work together. We need to work together. If we're not gonna work together on our own, maybe it needs to be written into a contract. A partnership with the DOJ. State Office of Violence Prevention and Gun Violence Prevention. There needs to be a state office. You know, right now is a big fish, small pond. State money is a big fish, big pond. And we're done.
Thank you very much. All right. Table number 2. And if you could share the question you were answering as well as your recommendations.
All right, sounds good. Apparently we were talking too loud because table 1 took some of our ideas. We'll see how the night winds out. So, for our funding priorities, we started with intervention, and what that meant to our group was the work that's being done in the community, on the ground, boots on the ground. Number 2 was prevention and implementing strategy and resources. Number 3 funding priority was outreach and communication and increasing the presence at community events. Sometimes there's a community event, people are not there, people don't know about it. That was mentioned earlier. And number 4, capacity for building grants, also mentioned earlier. Writing grant education, meeting prerequisites, because sometimes people file for a grant, they don't meet the prerequisite, so they're denied because they don't know that they didn't meet the prerequisite. So, OVP partnership, including these 3 points. Funding tiers. Not every organization needs $100,000, but they also need more than $500. So finding a way to funding tiers by size and by longevity, meaning that if you want to get in the game, if you want to be in the community and you're brand new, you may not get $100,000 your first time. You may get $20,000. Get out there, let's see what you can do. Number 2, collaboration with organizations that you aren't funding. So I noticed that there was a lot of organizations in here that were not presented as part of the OVP umbrella, yet they're doing work. They're getting their funding from somewhere, and being able to collaborate is going to increase our diversity in the communities as a whole. Number 3, new service, substance services, and wraparound services. And so addressing substance abuse issues in the community, because some people are seeing a lot of guns, physical guns, in and around drug use. So being able to reduce violence means a reduction in substance abuse. Did I get it? Okay. Thank you all.
All right. Let's go, table 6 on this. Oh, let's go to table 4. Is there a table 3 that's here? All right, let's go to table 4, then we'll go sequentially. Yeah. Coming, perfect.
All right. We had similar themes as well. We really were talking, our priority that we came up with, we struggled with the PIE exercise, but was really like, prioritizing work with high-risk individuals. We talked a lot about the risk that some organizations have with that short-term funding and the COVID funding going, and how are we going to build actual sustainable and funded services. I think the worst thing we can do is fund some services for a year and say, well, now they're gone, sorry, good luck getting your support met somewhere. Present data in a holistic way, not only just focusing on race was one of the impacts that the group had, and talking about just how the social determinants of health play into the factor and how this is a very complex issue. We talked about diversifying funding for this work. How can we get more healthcare entities, into payment to that same idea of other people are doing work? How do we tap into that work? There's not one solution, there's a community solution. Look for more opportunities to network and collaborate with other partners across the city. The CPC group is the what again? Community Peace Collaborative is one example that used to exist. We really appreciated this community visioning and this opportunities to come together and talk about priorities and how do we set from the ground up to the policy work, because that work is still needed. And then how can we really simplify our system of care and collaboration? Our systems are so fragmented, those that are trained can't even figure out how to navigate them. So how can we bring this into that work to have a real community response was what we came up with.
All right, is there a table 5, or are we on table 6? All right, table 6 it is.
All right, King was supposed to talk, but he said he wanted me to. Okay, so we really didn't talk too much about this. Thank you, King, for keeping us on task. So what we have up here, also, I want to say yes to 1 and 2. Thank you, 1 and 2. Please, everybody give them another round of applause, because that's the real right there. Okay, so communicate better amongst ourselves. So we're saying city employees, communicate with each other in a loving fashion, a kind fashion, an honorable fashion, and let it be okay if you're not right. Let it be okay if you're wrong. Let it be okay if you don't know something, that you can get educated. You guys need to come together and figure it out and stop stepping on each other's necks if at all possible, because it's trickling down and vibrating to the community. Find a unified mission and goals. All of you guys have great ideas. Community has great ideas, and to the point of some of the other tables, let's pick 3. I think that's what we said, and choose 1 out of the 3. Let's get it put together. We found out there's no information online. So as I sat at the table, they were like, "How do we connect with Bobby or whoever else?" And there I said, "Well, there is one single number that you can call." And so I provided that number, but I'm a nerd, and I nerd out on stuff online. And so then there is social media to the public. I know OVP does that. You guys are online. A lot of people don't know that, but I know, because again, I nerd out online. And then websites need a drastic overhaul. There's 2 different websites up right now. There's a beta version, and there's also a more, PS5 Xbox version. So we need to figure out which platform we're going to be on. And then reach out to our community members better. Meaning, let's have you guys have conversations with a lot of community members, right? But you're missing some. And this isn't just the problem with Office of Violence Prevention. This also happened in civic life, too. It happens at PBOT, but you guys are doing better. You guys are doing a great job by having something like this. But meeting community where they're at, where their places are, that would be helpful. So if you know where an event is, I know Rhea tries to do this, I know Andrew has done this, just go to their place of business where they're at. Then you get to actually learn if the funds are really being used responsibly, right? You get to see it. But do a site visit they don't even know you're doing, because you've seen an event, and see if the event's real. Because during this, I'll stop talking after this, but I have been, whenever I see something that I'm like, I don't understand what's happening here, and then listening to community tell me what's happening here, I go and decide to get the experience in that thing. So during my period of time of being a contractor for the city of Portland, I had complaints. I was like, I can't just complain about people and not have the experience and understand what they're going through. So I went and got a little side gig where I was working in government too. And then I understood what the heck y'all are going through. So, and with that being said, I also found ways to figure out how to make it work better and how to spread out dollars when you don't have very much to spread, and how to also pay yourself, how to advocate for your budget, how to get buy-in from commissioners, and just things like that. So when I say these things, I'm not saying this to toot my own horn or anything like that, but I'm saying this because you can do it too without hurting or harming others in your community and, you know, your leaner within your careers. That's it.
All right. Who's up next? Table 8? Is that y'all?
Here's the government.
Gotta love that excitement. We went a different direction because we're looking at the number question about what should the office be doing. That's a harder question when basic needs aren't being met of basic citizens. You have to start somewhere, and it has to start at the bottom, the basic, the most everyday needs. When you can go a block anywhere and seeing a 10 on the sidewalk, basic needs aren't being met. When you're talking about houselessness at the level that it is and people experiencing it at the level that it is, basic needs aren't being met. And you know how they're going to get those needs met? Crime, violence. At the basic level, it's about folks getting your needs met. So how does the Office of OPP start that? Well, you got to start with trust. You can't build community until that community trusts you. And it's not happening in 6 months. It's not happening in a year. It took 400 years for the trust to get to where it's at now. It's going to take at least twice that to get it back. But you have to start with that. You have to believe that you have got to start trusting the people who are doing the work. You have to trust the people whose community where this is happening. Regardless of where it is in the state, regardless where it's rural or city, each community has a specific that you need to be aware of. Coalition. And what I mean by that, regular contact, regular meetings, regular involvement, continued involvement, regardless of how far it goes. Because the reality is, somebody said earlier, the answers are in this room. The only way you know them is if everybody in this room sees each other a lot, repeatedly, having those conversations so they know what each other is doing. Folks at the table has to be those most affected. Has to be. That means you're also sitting next to somebody who's been just as affected, done 15 years, sitting next to somebody who's a lieutenant from Portland Police, and they are doing their job to make it work together. Law enforcement has to begin to trust that street messengers know what they're doing and allow it to play out because it might save their lives and these other youth. That basic needs thing. If you got a job and you can make $300,000 a year, would you go get a job as a drug dealer making that kind of money? Do you really need to get shot at? If people have options and opportunities to make a living, they're going to do that. But if they don't feel they do, they're going to find other ways to get those needs met. Evaluations. Every so often, city, state, and everybody goes out asking, oh, what do you need? What do you know? Okay, well, you have the data now. Do something with it. Put the data together. Do something with it. Funding, non-competitive. That is the worst thing you can do to communities of color and priority populations is make them compete for funding. Because guess what's going to happen? You're going to have 3 to 10 organizations doing the exact same work. 3 of those 10 are going to have grant writers. 3 of those 10 are still going to exist after 10 years, and the other 7 won't. So you have to be aware of that when you're talking about non-competitive, sustainable, ongoing, long-term. You're asking about stats for something that won't happen. You cannot record that. You can't record a child living out his dream or her dream doing what he, or they need to do. You can't quantify that. You can't quantify a child who becomes a teacher and affects generations of children. That's what you're asking when you're saying violence interruption and those sort of things and asking for numbers. I can't give you numbers on the violence that kid didn't get into, and I'm glad I can't. Action. Anything. Any action. Anything other than words, anything other than this is what we do, anything asking what you want us to do. I think I grew up in this community, 52 years. What I would want is for folks to get out of the way and let us fix what we know how to fix. We know what's going on our streets. We know what's going on in our community. So if we're all at the table consistently talking about it, then it's not a surprise to anybody, including law enforcement, including the system. So did I leave anything out? That's what we got.
All right. Table 9. And the comments have been excellent so far, but as we run closer to time, I want to make sure to remind everyone 1 to 2 minutes per. Thank you.
Thanks. So I'll try not to repeat what other folks have said, and this is kind of like a stream of consciousness. I feel like I need like red string. Other people have mentioned intervention services for high-risk individuals, but one of the things on here is how do we shift individuals' sense of pride? A quote I heard once was, "The most dangerous animal is a man whose pride has been hurt." So just kind of where can we shift that? And then we also talked about domestic violence prevention, identify the why. Why is this happening? I think it goes into a lot of what other folks have been saying. What is working? Like folks mentioned, it's hard to quantify that, but we have to be able to support the things that are working with the funds that are being given. Coordination of local governments. How is Multnomah County, the city, the state, how are we all working together? And OVP accountability, I think, is a big element as well. Anything else, Roberto?
I just like to add that we need more representation from different groups. I think we see the reduction in crime, but I think we need to be more inclusive of different groups because violence happens everywhere. And I think it affects minorities disproportionately, minorities in general. So I think we need to be more emphatic in really including more groups. And when I think, what I want to say about collaboration is important. I think we've been working in silos for too long. And I think one of the common denominators are the social determinants of health and also poverty. And it doesn't really make sense that we're working separately when there is one common denominator that is affecting the whole community. So the hope is that we all work together. Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right. Table 10.
Oh my God. Okay. My table, we kind of had similar themes that tables 1 through 9 have brought to the room. We really focused on that pie chart. Kind of got a consensus here that we would like the office to focus on where it is rooted in violence prevention, and then with intervention, highlighting not only the hospital-based programs and the wraparound services, but also mental health resources. We wrapped in Rose City Self-Defense with our prevention route, only to make way for sustainability that we found was super important, not only for funding of our CBOs, but for technical assistance for them. As mentioned by previous tables, is a huge need for, rounds of funding and opportunities. And then community building. And then some other notes that was brought up is interviews for funding application processes. This goes back to sustainability and technical assistance of there are organizations that don't have grant writers or anything of the sort that you'll see from bigger organizations, and they actually do better in interview face-to-face conversations for these grants and contracts. So we wanted to highlight that. As for grants, the grant process, info sessions need to be better advertised. People need to know 1 month to 3 weeks of anything that's going to come out of the office, minimum. And for folks that don't get funding, maybe some resources for other funding opportunities to be shared out to the folks that did not receive funding. But that's all.
Thank you. All right, group 11. I think that's table over in the corner here. 12. And we are getting close on time, so I think we have 2 more groups to present. Yeah, we absolutely can. Sure.
So group 12, a lot of what we talked about has already been said. I think we're on an accord. Community policing was a concept that came up many years ago. Don't see as much. We'd like for the office to be an advocate for that, because it's not just on the police, but community policing means citizen involvement as well. Community engagement and understanding that there are many different ways to engage the community. We were having a great conversation at the table. Some people like and are connected online. Most of us are. If my parents were still here, they would look at me like, huh? So sometimes mailings, sometimes door to door, sometimes just the old-fashioned way, the low-tech ways. If Rob Richardson was here, he would say low-tech. More prevention resources. It's in the name, right? Office of Violence Prevention. So why don't we see more preventative programs for young people? Now, we are developing and have plenty of intervention programs, and we need those, the credible messengers. And outreach workers, street outreach workers. But isn't the task to stop it before it happens? So yes, we need responses after things happen, but we also need more opportunities and resources for kids. We were talking, and Portland used to have more opportunities for youth, more resources to send them to. So to get back on that, to include that, coaching, mentoring youth, to value resources, that speaks for itself. Resources to impact how you think. And so maybe we develop an Instagram campaign. You remember those commercials that used to come on Saturday morning with the star, The More You Know? So maybe we can come up with a monthly campaign, and the campaign of the month is, well, let's stop doing this, or let's think about this, and just add messages out there, because we know they're all plugged in. Different way of thinking how to communicate. Resources to impact how people think, I think that plays into that. Youth, more youth around the decision-making tables. It's like we have a lot of conversations about youth, but we had a couple at our table. Yuki, I don't know if they're still here. There she is. And she made wonderful suggestions to us about why kids just don't listen to us as adults. I know I'm old. I know not every kid is going to listen. I got a 16-year-old daughter who I daily get into conversations with about, well, that's not the way you wash a dish. Well, that's the way I wash it. Okay. So we have to get more youth around the table and let them tell us directly, advise us directly about what they need. Empower the CPC. That meeting, as Antoinette said, started off as the gang task force meeting. And everybody came because that's what time it was. It's a different time now. So whatever we call it, we need to convene it so that people can continue to come together. Number two, more boots on the ground for engagement in the many different ways that we can provide engagement to the community. More substantive report outs, not open-ended data. I'm not a data guy, but when I see data, and somebody said in our group, when you see data and it's like what you lead with, I'm thinking, because numbers can say a lot of things, but I need some anecdotal stuff. I need some other stuff that helps inform me about what the numbers and the data mean. Demand city leaders coming around the tables. It's like the opposite way now. The triangle is inverted, where we get called and we have to report and stand up and justify. It's like, no, that was the whole reason behind the neighborhood association system, that citizens have the power and we inform and you come and listen. Youth perspectives and path to express their concerns. They need seats at the table, however we can make those happen. Thank you.
All right, our last group, table 14. And is there anyone else that I'm missing? Perfect.
So while he's coming up, I know we're nearing the end. We got 1 minute left, but we'll give you some time. So everyone should have gotten a piece of paper with feedback. Feel free to start filling that out. I want to make sure that we can get folks out of here. And then make sure that you have your 3 dots. So as you are headed out this evening, you can vote. And we'll make sure that similar themes will get voted in together, and we'll do some consolidating there.
I'll talk as fast as I can. Just kidding. Our themes are pretty common. We want more intergovernment collaboration. The CPC came up a ton. Something important about that is not having it at a police station, but having it be where community actually are at and everybody feels safe. And then meet the people where they're at, having more community meetings, more community connections, and really tearing down those intergovernment agency silos as much as possible. Hopefully the new form of government will allow us to do that. Dun dun.
Concise, I love it. Well, thank you everybody for the work that you did tonight. A couple housekeeping things. Take food home. We have too much of it, so take it home. We will have the PowerPoint on, do you want to pull this down? We will have the PowerPoint on the website tomorrow, so that should be happening. And then we should have, at the latest, some communication early September while we pull everything together. We're also going to take photos of everything so that you can all see how people voted with the dots. A couple of just things that I heard from your feedback was making sure that OVP has regular involvement with all of you. It sounded like this event was very much appreciated, but it definitely cannot be the last, right? This needs to be the start of something. Hearing a lot about collaboration, so collaboration between OVP and others, but then also collaboration between the grantees. Hearing a lot about visibility into what OVP is doing and what the grantees are doing. So sharing that out in a variety of different ways, high tech and low tech. Those are not a comprehensive list of the things that I heard, but some of the things that I heard more. So the next thing we are going to do, Liz is actually, big thanks to Liz, she did all the logistics for today. Honestly, don't know what I would have done without her. Big thanks to the staff, but mostly big thanks to you all. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for coming and helping us brainstorm what the future is going to look like. Liz is pulling up the final slide that we have that has some of our contact information. Again, this will be on the website, but we just wanted to make sure that the folks here tonight have our contact information, and so that's for every person on the leadership team in OVP currently. Any questions before we wrap? Make sure you vote. Thank you all so much. You'll be hearing from us soon.
I will say this, you know, even inside, like,
my emails were all good.